Welcome back to another episode of The Canon. I'm your host, Terry, and today doing my initial reaction for Avengers Endgame. We're in the Endgame now. So, finally saw it. Dude, this has been crazy. Let me just gush for a second about how just the journey. And it's funny because the movie was almost darn near close to a year from the last movie. And that typically doesn't happen. There's a lot of time between these movies, and we all knew it was going to be a year, but it was like, wow, man, that's coming out this year once it turned 2019. But at the same time, it felt so far away because we just had to know what was going to happen. Look, a lot of people I like and respect say Infinity War was not a cliffhanger. They say it was not a part one of part two. Bullcrap. I say it's both, and that's why we were so excited to see what happened in this movie. But anyway, with all that out the way, I saw it. I'm going to do my initial reaction, no spoilers. And just to give a caveat, I did see it a second time today. First time was last night. So, I still vividly remember my initial reaction because it was last night. So, going to give you that. And then we'll be doing the spoilers in a separate video sometime this weekend. So, with that being said, my initial reaction to Endgame. This is kind of what I feel that sums up my thoughts the best. Is I said, I don't know what there's more of in this movie. Plot holes, inconsistencies, or fan service. But what I do know is that it is the most epic movie that we've ever seen. So, it is such a conflicting thing. I left conflicted. That was the word that I used the most when talking to people, especially when I'm not trying to spoil it. I left conflicted. I thought that, some people might have heard news about the last 8 minutes. And if you listen to this, you clearly listen to other stuff. The last, I would say 40 minutes of this movie is the most epic, crazy, comic book brought to life stuff you ever saw. And the movie gets a huge boost for that. But for as good as that is, there's so much in the complete story and the way the movie is put together that I found lacking. And it was a lot of the same problems I've had with MCU movies, particularly movies made by the Russo Brothers, but it was amplified because it was 3 hours of it. And so if you're asking me, hey, just thumbs up, thumbs down, as people like to do, it's a thumbs up. Is there more positive than negative? Hell yes, way more positive. But overall, there is a lot lacking in this movie. There's a lot of things that I felt like, as I like to say, they zigged when I would have zagged. And I feel like there's a lot they left on the table to really make a compelling movie. And they went with the more convenient, lazy movie that was easy to do. But in delivering that plot, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. There's definitely things that I don't like as far as humor and the way they chose to take certain characters. There's definitely a feeling of this is way too much. Most of the movie, it feels good because you got most of the characters cut down to just the original Avengers. But then eventually you get to this point where it's like, wow, this is too much going on. And so there's a little bit of that. But the excitement, the fan service, all this stuff, it's fun. It's fun. It's a culmination movie. If I was to just look at this as a trilogy or a cap to the whole Infinity Saga, as they call it, phase 1, 2, and 3, A+, almost 100. But when I look at it just as its own movie, so many issues that I can't really get into, but I will say they mostly involve the story and the writing in this movie, which has usually been my issue with this MCU movies. But again, we see something we haven't really seen. And I've had the discussion of Marvel and DC and this idea that DC did it wrong because they didn't build the characters up, blah, blah. It's all bullcrap. To me, is if you make good movies, people will attach to the characters. If if it was so bad with DC, then Aquaman would not have made $1 billion. People attach to the characters, to good movies. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what order you go in. But what I realized with Endgame is that longevity is 100% a thing. And so when you see all this wrapped up and brought back and everything over the 11 years is tied into this movie, you really get an appreciation of the scope. And this movie is the biggest movie, I think, the most epic movie we've seen, superhero or otherwise. And so that's kind of how I feel about it. And those positives outweigh any other issues that you have as far as if it's good or not. And so I just came out conflicted because we all weigh movies in different ways. Some people weigh story more than they weigh the comedy. Some people weigh the acting more than they weigh the cinematography. It's all different. For me, story is huge. I wanted to knock it so bad, but also there was so much stuff I loved that I was just like, I need to see it again and I'll feel differently probably, or at least I'll be more clear because I'm not soaking in all the information. I'm actually just watching the movie because I know what's going to happen. And so, but it delivers. I will say that it delivers. It does not let you down. Whether you feel like me, where it's like kind of divisive, or you don't feel like me, I don't think anywhere you land on this movie that you hated everything. I think there is going to be at least 40 minutes worth of footage for every single person that watches this movie. Whether it's, 10 minutes in the beginning, 10 minutes at the end, 10 minutes in the middle, whatever it is, you're going to put together 40 minutes of like, I love those scenes. And that's the advantage of having such a long runtime and putting it all out there, because it feels like they put it all out there. It feels like they told the editor, you know what? You can go home. We're good. And they just threw every single crazy idea they had out there. It feels like Feige was like, dude, don't hold back. This is the last one for this saga. Just do it. And you see some crazy, geeky, nerdy comic book stuff. You see, things that you always wondered about. You see references to every single MCU movie, I would say. Watching it, I would say there's at least one nod, either verbal or physical or visual, to every single Marvel movie that's been put out. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. And as I said, as a culmination, it's an A+. As a movie, I still got to figure out what I think about it. So anyway, that's it for me as far as my final reaction, or my initial reaction, excuse me. I'll give a grade later once we talk about spoilers. I might see it a third time before I do spoilers, but either way, go to the comment section, let me know what you thought. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, get the conversation started. Remember, if you heard it here, it's official canon.